If any of you have been following my channel, you know that a lot of my content is around Corvus Belli games, such as Infinity. I really enjoy playing games like Infinity. I don't get much time to actually play them, but they are really good. And one of the main things about them is they're very, very crunchy. There's a lot of tactical depth. You have to be focused in the game because one small mistake could mean the game for you, and it usually means me losing the game from one small simple mistake that I've made, or one huge error I've made in the game. So playing the game can be very, very intensive and take up a lot of your concentration, and by the end of it you can be pretty knackered from just the sheer amount of thinking you've been doing and overthinking in my part. So sometimes it's just nice to play a game that's just a bit of fun, and that's what I want to talk about today. So this is a bit of a off-kilter video. I've got my ghetto airbrush set up in the background there, so please ignore that. And yeah, I'm just talking to the camera for a little bit. I've got no real plan here, but that's kind of what this game is like. So on the weekend, I got to play Mutant Year Zero Zone Wars. My friend basically had the game, and we went over to play it, and I just had a really great time playing the game. It was so much fun. And so I just wanted to share why I thought this game was fun and why it's nice to do these types of games from time to time. So as I said, it's a very easy game to pick up. It was a very, very simple game in terms of the rules. After a couple of rounds, it was very easy to understand how the game works. But right from the setup, it was straight away a lot of fun. So I want to just talk about a little bit about the setup of this game. So I should actually say a little bit about the actual game itself. So Mutant Year Zero, if ever you played the video game Road to Eden, that was really cool. I really liked that game. It had some crossovers with XCOM in terms of like being a squad shooter type of thing there, but with a lot more role-playing game aspects built in as well. It was a really cool game with a really cool art style. I love the world. It was great. There's an RPG as well of the game, and so in this war game adaptation of it all, there's basically two sets that you can get, each with two different factions in them, and we played with the main popular factions, I guess you would say, which are the Gen Lab army, which is a bunch of animal people, basically. So you have a mutant duck, mutant pig, mutant rabbit, so forth. And I played and so my friend was playing them, and I played the Arc Mutants, who are kind of survivors in the post-apocalyptic world who have mutated somewhat out in the wastes. And they're basically fighting. We were doing a scenario where they're fighting over artifacts. Everyone's like looking for old world artifacts and collecting them. And basically the winner is the person who scores the most. And to score the most in this game, in this particular scenario that we played, was to basically get the artifacts. And so they were represented by little tokens on the board. And when you pick one up, you then draw an artifact card and see what artifact you get. And different artifacts have different values. And there's a whole load of these on the table. And the other way of scoring was to basically to bloody your opponents. So every time you actually managed to bloody an opponent, that would also give you a victory point. But I want to talk about the setup of this game and why it was straight away like, this is quite a different, very relaxed kind of game, and just for fun. And it was the fact that when we were reading the setup, it's like, okay, you set up you set up the scenery, you know where the deployment zones are and things, and then it says, for the artifact tokens, put all the tokens in your hand, raise them 1.5 meters over the table roughly, and just drop them and see where they land. I was like, okay, is that going to work? And then just make sure that they're a certain distance apart. I think it worked out to be about, I guess, 6 or 8 inches apart from one another. using the measuring tool that they've got. And it was surprisingly effective, just dropping these things on there and then they're just spreading out. And it was just so much fun, rather than taking turns trying to think, oh, I'm going to put one over there and one over there, and you're going to put one over there kind of thing to do it tactically. Just dropping them on the table was just instantly gratifying. It was so good. I loved it. It was fun. And so straight away I was kind of like, ooh, this is going to be a giggle. This is going to be a giggle, this game. And then we started getting into the game itself, and yeah, very interesting mechanics involved. It feels like a very, you don't feel too bad about too many of the roles, because it's kind of weird. You'll have abilities and things. So for example, you might have a ranged skill. So when you're shooting, it'll have a ranged skill of 5. So that means you roll 5 of these, I think it's yellow dice, which are your like ability die. And then depending on the equipment you're using, say you're using a rifle and it has like 2, it says to roll 2 equipment dice, you add 2 black dice, which are the equipment dice, to the roll. And that's your roll for shooting. Now, unlike other games where it's usually like, you know, roll to hit, 3 or more, 4 or more, 5 or more, depending on your skill level, things like that, it does away with that. It's just like the more dice you have, the better chance you have of wounding your opponent. And it's basically every 6 you roll is a wound or a success or whatever against the opponent you're shooting. And every 1 you get on your character dice actually gives you like this thing called an endpoint, which is very positive. It basically allows you to do these special abilities that your character has. Or if you roll a 1 on the equipment you're using, then it does damage the equipment. So the vast majority of all the rolls you're making are positive. So if you're someone who ends up rolling lots of 6s, you get in lots of hits, lots of successes, fantastic. If you're someone who's rolling lots of 1s, you're still then getting lots of endpoints to use for special abilities later on. And it turned out I'm very good at rolling 1. So I was like pooling so many endpoints in this game, which allowed me to do some really cool things. Like my bug guy could fly across the board and grab loads of equipment, or he could fly and hover in the air and shoot from up high, getting him an extra die on rolls to hit, and then just drop back down into cover. It was really gratifying that I rolled lots of 1s, and normally that would be frustrating. But in this game, for the most part, it was a really positive experience. Yeah, it took me a lot to actually wound anybody, but I had now the ability to do loads and loads of weird, crazy stuff on the board. It was really, really refreshing. It was really nice. And as the game goes on as well, it was a very interesting scenario where the game keeps running until this basically acid rain just kills everybody. So it's a bit of a gamble game where you're like, how many turns can I go and get as much loot as possible and get out of the board before this acid rain really hits? And so there's like these 4 triggers. So you have a minimum of 4 turns. But we were running through turns and not triggering the acid rain for a long time. So we're like, okay, so we're just going to keep playing. And eventually then the acid rain started coming, and it really started to come very quickly. We're like, crap, we're going to get off the board and things like that. So there's a mad rush to get off the board. But as we're doing these things, we're also triggering these other events that are happening on the zone. My flying insectoid guy with the rifle, he was doing a lot of flying and harassing and staying in cover so no one could really get him. However, he kept on triggering loads of zone effects. And so he would be attacked by wild, ravenous boars. He got he triggered off a land shark that was then on the board for the entire game, just popping out of the ground, just grabbing anyone who tried to move anywhere, making it very difficult to get off the board. And he also managed to fly and land in on a landmine and half kill himself. And he did eventually manage to fly off the board with just like 1 hit point left after being blooded as well. So it was very, very kind of a cinematic moment, because that he was the one who also carried the most equipment off, which was great. with all these kind of random events happening, it was really, really fun. Like, just lots and lots of fun. It was really good when we found one of the artifacts we found was like things were starting to get crazy, and we're just having a giggle and a lot of fun. And we, my opponent finds a leather jacket, and so we start doing like the Fonz impressions, and then the land shark came out, and so we're like, we literally just jumped the shark with this scenario. It was kind of fun. It was just such a breath of fresh air. I just wanted to share this because I've just been thinking about it a lot since. And normally what I do is I get into a game with all of the deep rules, and I start thinking about, oh, what if you do this? What if you do this? What if you create this army and this, that, and things like that? And here there's a little bit of you choose your characters. We decided to do 3v3, but you can do up to 5v5 on your army selection. There's only 5 models for each faction. So there's a little bit of choice with the thing that you run, but it ultimately doesn't really matter which ones you run, because you'll take them, they'll come with a special ability, and they'll get a random ability as well. So every time you play, even with the same characters, you might have a different combination of abilities, and it's the randomness in this game is what creates the fun and how relaxed you play the game. So if ever you want to have a game that is just fun, and where you just pull out the models, you could have a few beers, and you just play, and it's easy to pick up and do everything. You don't have to think too much about it, but you can kind of create a story and have a good laugh. I really want to recommend Mutant Year Zero Zone Wars. It's really good.